Welcome, Gabriela Jaeger. Um, you're joining me from New York City, and I'm
Okay.
really excited that we are finally getting a chance to speak to each other. And it's funny because my podcast Shift Happens, your program that you co-founded and where you are a program director, Global Changemakers. I'm glad, that we are meeting here and discussing change and shifts and pivotal moments. It seems like you're like the super pro for this. And so, before we get started, I just want to know what's your state of mind?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you. I'm a fan of the podcast. I'm a listener, so it's such a
Thank you.
privilege to be now part of it. And part of this group of amazing women that you've been interviewing
Thank
in the
you.
podcast. Um, my current state of mind is I'm a little bit concerned. I wish I could start with something more hopeful.
Mm,
But yeah, I mean, we all see what's going on in the world, and yeah, I'm a little bit concerned, I have to say.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we all, or many, share this not only sentiment.
Yeah.
Um, how would you describe your or what is perfect happiness for you?
Hmm. Well, that's hard, right? Happiness is I see happiness as peaks, right? Sometimes you experience a lot of happiness, but I have to say I like when things are very calm, when nothing much is happening. So when nothing out of the ordinary is happy, I think that's when I'm the happiest.
Yes, yes. I can relate to that also really well.
I
I'm
think that's why I like Switzerland so much. It's such a stable country, so I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's true. And which living person do you most admire and why?
Hmm. Uh, well, I admire many people for different reasons, and many of the young people that I work with in my organization. But if I go for someone that's more known, I think I would have to say Jane Goodall. I'm a huge fan of hers.
Hmm.
She's such an inspiration.
Hmm.
And she gives me a lot of hope. I mean, the work that she has been doing all her life basically is not only groundbreaking for women, for the environment, for animals, but also is very inspirational, right? Because
Hmm.
things have been difficult,
Hmm.
and she keeps on going. It's
Hmm.
amazing.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, yeah. I must agree. Every time I hear her, it's she has something to give. I mean, to truly give from soul to soul. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
So,
Um,
before we are looking or we hear from you about your work and the organization that you co-founded, Global Changemakers, um, of course, I'm curious to hear how you changed into becoming a leader for change makers and how that happened. Was this something gradually, or was there really a moment where you said, nope, I have to change something, this is a pivotal moment, I need to shift gears or shift something to something else?
Well, I have to say, I mean, I've always been very interested in human rights and the world and so on and so forth. But you know how life is. It just takes you, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes you have to make decisions. Somehow I ended up in this work. If not by accident, it was a series of things that led me to it. I'm married to a diplomat, which means that every so and so years we have to change countries, and start from scratch, and that's complicated. And I ended up in when we were in Switzerland, I started working in this, which was, it was a program before it became an organization. And my mandate there was to create a granting program for young people to
Mm-hmm.
do projects for the benefit of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started, I tried to do a little bit of benchmarking and due diligence, see what was around, see, it was a big question. How much money do you give them, for how long, to whom, and so on and so forth. And there wasn't really that much around. Um, and also, my expectation of the projects that we were going to support was, if not low, much more modest than what they ended up being. So
Mm-hmm.
suddenly, we started supporting programs that were doing massive changes with very little funds, and that were led by extremely young people. Back in the day, we were working with teenagers. And because of the economic crisis in 2008, 2009, it was looking as if they were going to shut down the program.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of started working remotely, because by then I had moved to another country. I was in Mozambique.
Oh dear. Yeah.
um, and this is, when life hits you, right? I was, on the one hand, incredibly inspired by the work that these young people were doing, facing the shutdown of the program that I, absolutely loved, and that I had seen having incredible impact, but also faced with the reality of being
Reality.
a trailing spouse,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that, my professional career was very much depending on whatever it is that I was able to put together. In different countries,
Wherever.
sometimes you have
Yeah.
restrictions,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot work, or finding a job every time you go to a new country can be complicated, because you're only there for a few years. So it just, I wouldn't describe myself as someone that from a young age knew that wanted to be a leader and, change the world and start things. I'm a little bit more of an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't something that I thought I would be doing, but suddenly I was faced with this reality, and I just, took a leap of faith and said,
Mm-hmm.
let's make this happen. Unfortunately, with one of my colleagues and one of the early members of the organization, we said,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let's try to do this on our own, to register as an organization, and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's, I mean, it's not interesting, it's fascinating, right? When you look back and then you think about it, you sit basically at the kitchen table, right? You start with founding an organization, yeah. And now, I mean, you have to give me some numbers later. Now I'm still like in your personal realm, where you are realizing your situation as a mother, as a diplomatic wife, as someone who knows that, she has to leave home and recreate herself. So it was probably also a very fortunate move to bring your deep interest for the youth and their talent and the hope that's connected with it, and then your reality, and bring it together and work remotely, so you're flexible. However, that was what, at a time I read, 2013. So we there was no Zoom, and working remote was not as common as it is now. I'm sure it was pretty challenging.
It was, and more than anything, I mean, we didn't have Zoom. We had other ways of communicating remotely, but especially when you're starting something, people think of organizations as places, right? As a, you know, having a corporate headquarters, and regardless of the fact that the program has had so much impact, then it was hard to convince people that we were actually doing things when I explained to them, well, I'm sitting here. My co-founders are in different countries, and the people that we work with are spread all over the world, and that's how we do it. The pandemic definitely had a huge impact in that sense, because we were one of the few organizations that was doing that, so we were in a sense prepared, and it also then made the world realize, oh, this is actually possible. So it helped a lot in that sense. But you're absolutely right. It was more than the complications or difficulties of actually doing it. It was more of a sense of credibility that was hard to get sponsors, partners, to buy into.
But you did it.
Yeah. Well, you know, one keeps going. It's sometimes I think of you know, like the hot potato situation, you know. You have a hot potato, you have to do something with it, right? It's again, you know, sometimes life just puts you in a situation where you just have to act and follow your heart and take a leap of faith, even if it's difficult for some people. It was definitely difficult for me to take that leap of faith, but yeah, sometimes you just have to do it, right? Try things out.
And when you now look back at this moment of making a decision to try things out, making a decision to take this leap of faith, jumping in the cold water, you know, struggling with finding support and sponsors and so on, what do you think is like the lesson you really learned from it, for yourself and personally, but also maybe something that you can generalize?
I think the biggest lesson is you need to try. um I tend to be someone that very much cherishes security, right? And probably if I had the opportunity to have something more stable, you know, be with the company or continue a more traditional path, probably I would have gone through it. I just didn't have it at the time, and it it also, you know, played a huge part that the network that I was working with was very passionate, and they're very young. And something that I learned is the younger you are, the easier it is to take these leaps of faith. I was already, you know, I was younger, but I had already passed that that period of time where you say, okay, let's just do it.
Yeah.
So it was hard, and I think the biggest lesson that I learned is you need to try. You know, sometimes you fail. I think failure is something that we are all very scared of. Some people more than others. I was probably of the ones that are more afraid than others, but you cannot let the fear of failing stop you from doing something that you believe in. So I am getting a little bit better at realizing that failing is can be a good thing, and you learn from it. It's still very difficult for me to realize, you know, that something didn't go the way I wanted to. But
Yes,
yeah,
we
that's
all
that's
we can
that's the
all
biggest
relate to
lesson.
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, global change makers. You are working with youth um, all over the world, and I find it such a fascinating and inspiring concept, and it's so hopeful because,
Yeah.
right, our future depends on the youth more than ever, especially, we here in the Western world. I mean, we are all becoming so old, and some, Eastern countries as well. But it's just, uh, and what I also find, as the mother of two boys, grown young men, I have to say, um, there's a lot of, how can I say, not discrediting, but a lot of criticism on today's youth, and there's not this and there's not that, and maybe it was like this always, right? But if I read, for example, what you are able to mobilize and empower youth to embrace and to mobilize, I mean, that's what we need. That's what the world needs. So if you could just give a little bit of context of your organization and the programs you do, and also put a few numbers on it so that the listeners get an idea, and soon we'll click your website.
Well, I hope I'll be able to say it in a decent period of time. I'm very passionate about what I do. But going back to what you were saying, being a mother, and having I have a teenager, having young people in your family does make you realize and have you a little bit in contact with the way they see things. And you're right, there's a lot of criticism of youth. I agree that there has always been, but this generation is probably very criticized for being apathetic, or for being cynic, or for being not productive. Which in my experience, I tend to work with young people that are incredible and probably are a little bit out of the norm. And part of the work that we're trying to do is to encourage the ones that are not active to be active. But they are faced with a very difficult reality than what we were faced when we were
Yes.
young, I think.
I think so too.
I think they have grown up in a very different world, in a very competitive world, in a world where having a degree, or having all these checklists that we had, that if we completed, kind of made it clear that we were going to go one way. And for young people right now, it's not like that. So going back to what we do, we started out working with young people that were already very active in whatever field. So it could be the environment, it could be education, it could be women's rights, it could be civic engagement, really anything that was bringing positive impact to their communities or to the world. And we had a selection process where we brought the best for an event. We had that we call the Youth Summit. It's a very competitive event. We have thousands and thousands of applications for only 60. And in that week, we basically network. We teach them how to be more impactful in whatever it is that they're doing. And more importantly, we give them a group, a family that they can rely on when they're struggling, because obviously it's not the most common thing to say, I want to change the world. So it has been incredibly impactful through the small grants that we give them. They develop incredible projects. And over the years, and also because of challenges, because funding something like this is very expensive, because we do a full sponsored program, which allows us to bring people from all walks of life, from refugee camps to people that are studying at Ivy Leagues. It's really, the selection criteria is how much impact you're doing. So it is a very expensive program. And also every year when we had the selection process, we realized we're leaving thousands, like thousands behind. We can only take
Mm.
60.
Mm.
So that made us rethink what we were doing. And by then we had already a very strong and robust network full of incredibly talented people. We were also facing the end of our sponsorship with the main sponsor that was financing this summit. So 2020, before the pandemic hit, we were prepared to go online. We
Mm-hmm.
had a group of some of our best people put together online courses on project management, but
Mm-hmm.
project management not from the corporate perspective, but from the
Yeah, yeah.
perspective of what it
NGO.
is to be a young person wanting to do something. This is what you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And the teachers in the course are members of our network, so are people that our audience can really relate to.
Mm-hmm.
So we launched this just before the pandemic. And through that, we've been able to reach literally everywhere. We have young people in 190 countries that have gone through our courses. If they
Wow.
go through the course, then they can apply for small funds to do their projects. So we've been able to finance small initiatives that are having massive, massive impact in the world. And that you asked for numbers. We've financed already more than 500 projects, youth-led projects all over the
Wow.
world, which
Mm-hmm.
collectively had an impact of more than 16 million people, which is insane.
It's insane.
The school we started online, we started with facilitation and project management in English. Then we are, slowly translating these courses to different languages in Spanish, Portuguese. We released a course on menstruation, sexual and reproductive health a few years ago in English that has had a massive, massive
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, we made the version of that course in Spanish. Then we followed with ecology. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we're doing
Mm-hmm.
kind of a lot.
Yes. Wow. So what are some other examples of projects that they are doing? You mentioned the sexual health project, and what is something that is like a reoccurring theme or need, or what maybe even unites the young people who are going out to do something for their communities or countries? Is there something that is like a where they all meet almost, yeah, because it's such a universal need?
Well, definitely, we started thinking, I think the menstruation and sexual and reproductive health course is a perfect example.
Hmm.
I it came as things do, in a way, as an accident. I was living in Zimbabwe at the time, and we had a cyclone, so there was a terrible humanitarian crisis. Um, and I was, in a just amongst friends discussing, what different organizations were doing for relief in that crisis. And someone from, I don't remember if it was UN Women or UNHCR, one of those organizations, were talking about the distribution of relief bags and how important it was to distribute menstrual pads and just in the context of the humanitarian crisis. And then I brought up the fact that this packs last for so long, right?
Hmm.
Menstruation is something that women have every month,
Hmm.
and that
Hmm.
that perhaps
Hmm.
they should be thinking about doing something else, something
Hmm.
that was more sustainable and something that was a little bit more long term. And then we started this discussion about the menstrual cup. and how difficult it was for some cultures to introduce, you know, this menstrual cup. And then I brought the example of one of our change makers that's in Malawi, who runs a youth development center, a center where, you know, she basically builds the capacity of young people to be to gain employable skills. And I mentioned that when I visited her, her focus wasn't really on women's rights or on sexual and reproductive health or anything like that, but how menstruation was one of the biggest obstacles for women actually to finish school, to go to work, etc. It's incredible. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I had been not only a user, but a promoter of the menstrual cup for many years. And I always heard the story of it's culturally difficult, people don't accept it, and then they need restrooms, and then they need clean water. And I was, well, they need that to begin with, right? That cannot be the reason for us to say no to that. Those are issues that we need to fix, regardless of any other thing. And B, when I visited this girl, I saw a bunch of menstrual cups that she was distributing, and I asked her about that, and she said it has been a huge hit. It really, you know, the moment I started talking to young women and women in our center and explained, you know, how it worked and the benefits it has and so on and so forth, they all took it. So it really made me think how sometimes we approach as the Western world or as aid agencies problems. And one of the biggest problems with people taking on innovations or you know, lessons is, who are these coming from, right? It makes a huge difference when it's someone from the community to actually talk in their language, explain things, answer questions, because a lot of times people don't feel comfortable to ask questions to, you know, perhaps a male doctor from another country, or an aid, you know, worker. So the connecting point was, this is such an obstacle for young women, you know, getting pregnant at 15 or getting their period and not being able to go to school. I thought, okay, I'll just put together a group of our girls and who are, you know, doctors in their own personal careers, or who have experience in working with youth groups, or who are psychologists. So I put together a group of professional women in our network. And there was a little bit of a backlash in my organization, so with my team, because they said, but this is not what we do. You know, we're not a health organization. Why are we going into this field? And I was very determined to do this, because I said, this is a root cause, right? This is something that we see not only happening in Africa, but it happens in Latin America. And as we started putting together that course, we realized even in Europe, there's such a lack of knowledge of women's health. So the course started, you know, very much with my idea of, let's bring sustainable menstrual practices to the world, to actually realizing, oh, it's not just that, you know, it's not just that girls are not completing their education because they don't have menstrual products. It's also that they're getting pregnant. It's also that we started hearing stories of, you know, someone who finished a university degree, and the first time she heard of an ectopic pregnancy was when she was pregnant and almost died. So it kind of like, you know, you start with something, you start scratching, and then boom, all these things come across. So we started menstruation, sexual and reproductive health was the first one. Um, and then we started, going into what I call, well, what is called transversal issues.
Mm-hmm.
So issues that are recurring and that are really at the forefront of young people
Mm-hmm.
are obviously education, um, the environment,
Mm-hmm.
and there are education. There are a bunch of others. So we slowly are trying to, put together skill sets,
Mm-hmm.
easy, digestible, accessible in different languages from young people, for other young people to realize every single thing that we do has
Mm-hmm.
an effect on the world. And there
Mm-hmm.
are there are, you can be a full-fledged activist, or you
Mm-hmm.
can be just someone who's very conscious of their actions.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really what has been, the shift in the last years for the organization. We moved from only working with a very select group
Mm-hmm.
to use the select group to try to go
Broader.
and spread
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Yeah. And create an even stronger ripple effect, right, from everything.
Yeah,
It must be
yeah.
so inspiring, I can imagine, to work with these young people. So what is for you the most yeah, rewarding, but really also in inspirational, or that where you feel like this is bringing you forward in your work for them
Well,
and with them.
as I said, I when you asked me what my state of mind is, I'm very concerned about where things are going, and I really think that the only way forward is to open channels of communication
Hmm.
to support those that are already doing something and to try to engage those that are not.
Hmm.
And going back to something that we already talked about, when you're young, you try. You have the time, or you have the will, or life hasn't beaten you down, or just took you to the path of adulthood and responsibilities and bills and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
So what really inspires me is seeing these young people many times with the most difficult backgrounds that one can fathom. I've met literal heroes.
Hmm.
Um, and that is really what keeps me going, just thinking, if we don't support them, they are really the future, right? And they are the
Hmm.
present. They keep telling me, we're not the future, we're the present. It's not for tomorrow, it's today.
Yeah, true.
So that's very much, whenever we have challenges with funding, which tends to be our biggest challenge, we always find a way, and just keep going, just continue to do whatever it is that you can, because we cannot just sit and and,
Hmm.
and see the world crumble in front of us. So
Hmm. Hmm.
so that's it. Really just the hope that whatever you do will somehow, have an effect, or perhaps help in one way or another.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow, brava. Um, yeah, really. I mean, I want I want to be young again now and be there and do
Do
something.
you?
I
I
can
don't know.
No, no.
I'm getting
Actually,
more and
no,
more
no.
comfortable with middle
Actually, no,
age.
no, no, you're right. No, I mean, in regards to what you're doing and enabling. But yeah, no, I actually also yes, feel for the young ones, even though this is
Yeah,
their reality, right? And so everybody tries to always make the best of wherever they are and what's going on. But in comparison, I find it also challenging,
yeah,
um
yeah.
what our younglings, whether teenagers or twins, are maneuvering in the
Yes, yes.
competition
They're
that's out
they're
there.
they're facing, they're facing a lot of challenges. Yeah.
Yes, they do. So, speaking of challenges, like moving challenges, you're in New York now. Do you know when you are leaving the city, or and do you already know where you will go next, or do you have a little bit of calm still?
Uh, well, we do know that the tenure ends in 2 years, so
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 years more in New
Mm-hmm.
York.
Mm-hmm.
As to where next, no
Mm-hmm.
idea yet. The
Mm-hmm.
process starts a year ahead,
Mm-hmm.
so we still have some time to find out.
Mm-hmm.
But that that gives me a little bit of ticking clock, because New York is such an incredible place
Mm-hmm.
to meet people,
Mm-hmm.
to build partnerships,
Mm-hmm.
to build support. So
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot to do in the coming 2 years,
Yeah.
and hopefully by the time we move, I don't know. I keep telling people in my organization it's time for someone else to take the realms, and for me just to sit and see where this goes.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Maybe hopefully by the end of this tenure, some you know um, setting will be put together so that I
Mm-hmm.
can slowly move to that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I thank you so much. Nee, I wanted to ask, I always ask my guests, who are usually very busy, two questions. One, how do you calm down, and how do you create an atmosphere of yeah, respiration and recuperation? And if you're not there, what do you do to energize yourself?
Mm, so I do yoga and I
Mm-hmm.
do Pilates, and that's helpful. I'm not a big exercise junkie, so yoga and Pilates give me, the right um, proportion of movement and making me think you're doing something. Especially yoga, is
Mm-hmm.
very grounding, so that helps. I also Now I'm in the phase of loving puzzles and word games, so I do a lot of that and reading. But I
Yeah.
have phases. So when I was in Mozambique, I took up sewing, and then my daughter makes fun of me when we were putting the Christmas tree. A lot of the ornaments were, oh, these are from your sewing phase, and these are from your pottery phase, and this I kind of like have phases of doing, but I do like trying different crafts whenever possible. That's very calming.
Mm-hmm.
In New York, it's complicated, as you know. It's just such a busy city, and
Mm-hmm.
I just don't have the space to devote a room to all my sewing and my
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
whatever creative project. So I'm into puzzles right now,
Mm-hmm.
um, and energizing. Ah, yeah, I'm not such an energetic. You know what really gives me a lot of energy? The summits. When
Mm-hmm.
we get together
Mm-hmm.
with our young people, it's just super intense because, of course, they are 20 years younger than I am, and sometimes more. As every summit, it just feels like, okay, now the selection process are people born in 2000s. God, it's like
I know.
it's insane.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so they're very young, and for many of them it's the very first time that they leave their country, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they leave their village. And I
Mm-hmm.
cannot tell you the incredible uh catalog of stories of what it is to move a young person for the very first time out of their village, and
Mm-hmm.
everything that
Mm-hmm.
can happen in between. But
Mm.
so yeah, they come and they're super excited, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
sleep for a whole week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now getting a little bit better at actually going to sleep because I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
cannot,
Yeah.
stay
Keep up.
awake.
Yeah.
But definitely those weeks fill me with energy and with hope and you know, kind of like charge my batteries to go through the year.
Oh, wonderful. So everyone who's interested to find out more about Global Changemaker, it's global minus changemakers, changemakers or changemaker? Plural?
Changemakers, yeah, plural.
Dot com.
.net.
.net.
Net. Yeah.
Global
Yeah.
minus changemakers.net. Yes.
Correct. And
So
we're, you know, we're all over social media, so it's easy enough to find us.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I thank you so much for your time and this insight into your important work and the youth that you've empowered and activated over the years. And yeah, I'm certainly continue to follow all of this. Thank you so much, Gabriella.
No, thank you. It's been, you know, a privilege to be part of this, and congratulations on the great podcast. It's really, you know, you
Thank
are
you.
doing an incredible work to put together this amazing group of women. They're just, you know, so full of wisdom and of support. I really love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm very honored too. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.